This just in, you are going to die. And I am going to die. Oh no, we're all going to die. A new study has revealed that there's only so much you can do to prevent yourself from dying. Now, this is something that we've kind of known for a long while. Nonetheless, there's a huge industry in prolonging life, whether that's the cosmetic industry or cryogenic industry or these much more bizarre DNA, you can do this, why don't you have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a tablet for this. And like all of us, I suppose, on some level are engaged in the denial of the most fundamental fact of life. You are born, you are going to die. There have been various false markers that have led people to believe that perhaps it was possible to sort of indefinitely prolong life. And sometimes even me, deep down, I think, no. Not for old Russ. I'll find a way of keep going. You just can't imagine the lights going out just like that, can you? Surely, Lord, there must be limitless consciousness. Surely there must be some thrum of energy beyond my material form. Certainly it seems some studies have shown that there is an element of energetic presence that goes beyond the kind of cardiovascular constancy. Nonetheless, let's have a look at this story and what these studies have shown about us trying to cheat death because we simply won't accept the rude facts of life. You're born, you die. Immortality and everlasting youth are the stuff of myths, according to new research. Just because they're myths, that doesn't mean they're not true. Myths can be truer than truth. The mythology of the warrior, the mythology of love, the mythology of the trickster, of the shadow. Myths contain great truth. So, that's the first issue that I'm taking with this. There's an industry on its way to being worth 610 billion, and scientists have spent decades attempting to harness the power of genomics and artificial intelligence to find a way to prevent or even reverse aging. It's an interesting philosophical issue, isn't it? Because I guess this is where it takes you quite quickly. What's the point in acquiring all this wealth so you can just take personal rocket ships to the moon or make the world your personal fiefdom of pleasure if ultimately you're going to die one day? What does it benefit a person if they inherit the world but loseth their soul? For me, the information that you can take from this study, that there is ultimately nothing you can do to prevent the biological realities of life reaching their natural conclusion, i.e. death, is that what are your values? You have to confront what your values are. What are you here for? What are you going to do for this limited amount of time that you're alive? Sometimes I forget, I get adrenalized and scared and think that my job is to create sort of like little personal places of security to assert and exert power and control. But the fact is that it's all going to go. You can spend all your time eating vitamins and doing yoga and exercising and looking after your hair and trying to look nice and making sure the log pile never diminishes, but eventually all the logs must burn. They must all go. What the point of spirituality is for me is coming to terms with that reality. That is reality. And it's sort of sad because every time you say goodbye to somebody, every time you look at your beautiful children or the face of someone you love or an older person, you're confronted with this ever-present reality. Our whole culture is set up in denial of it. The worship of youth, denial of death. The constant celebration of apparently eternal ideas. This too can be about the denial of death unless you recognise that eternal principles can live on beyond your own individual life, whether or not your personal soul or essence continues beyond your biological death. That's kind of irrelevant. That's why I think it's important to have experiences in life that kind of help you to see a version of reality that is not contingent on your personal perspective. Let me unpack that a minute. Meditation, psychedelic experiences, which I can't do because I'm in recovery, but meditation, let's say, allows me to experience a version of consciousness that's not solely governed by memory, impulse, instinct, projections that I feel for much of my waking life. That suggests to me a level of consciousness that is not about my individual identity. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is eternal or impersonal or non-local. That doesn't suggest that at all. There are other things that take us into that territory. The experiences of people that have had, near-death encounters, that neurologist that had that condition and suddenly experienced the level of consciousness that he said made it feel like, he said to imagine what it would be like if a chimp was a human for a day and then had to go back to being a chimp. Like if you were, oh my God, this is brilliant. I've got a phone. This is fantastic. Oh my God, this culture. Oh God, that latte's amazing. Hot dogs. This is brilliant. Right, back to being a chimp. You can't even explain it to the other chimps because there's no language. There's this thing called culture, poetry, space travel. You know, the fact that death is real shouldn't, in the awakened soul, cause despondency, but a kind of great glory. Perhaps the thing I feel for my children, my friends, the people I love, is my own personal connection to the eternal. And even if it ain't, you might as well live like God is real, because otherwise you might turn into an individualistic, materialistic, rationalistic, selfish swine rustle. That has happened before, you know. The study by an international collaboration of scientists from 14 countries, including experts from Oxford, set out to test the invariant rate of aging hypothesis, which says that the species has a relatively fixed rate of aging from adulthood, and that it was an anomaly that like life expectancy has increased over time. Some people say, well, hold on a minute, you live much longer than you used to live in the 19th century. Yeah, it's because we're not being chewed up in bloody mills. So there are all sorts of false markers around life expectancy, but I imagine if you live in harmony with your environment, through your diet, through your conduct, through the condition of the planet that you live on, you will get to some optimal sort of state of longevity. But more important than that longevity is the kind of person that you are, the kind of life that you live, the kind of values that you have. Gripping on, I made it to 120 years old. Fuck you, buddy boy. You've not experienced any reality, you've not experienced any joy, you've not recognised who you are. The debate over how much longer we can live has divided the academic community for decades. That's a shame, they wasted that time. With the search for extended life and health particularly active in the UK, where 260 companies, 250 investors, 10 non-profit and 10 research labs are using the most advanced technologies to prove something that's bloody obvious. You die one day. And a denial of death is a denial of life, a denial of nature, a denial of absolute reality. And it's not everyone that's going to be granted immortality in these crazy schemes, is it? It's privileged few. People don't want to accept the scythe. What's been missing from the debate is research comparing lifespans and multiple animal populations with humans to work out what's driving mortality. It's death, baby. We compared birth and death data from humans and non-human primates. Our findings confirm in historical populations that life expectancy was low because many people died young, but as medical, social, and environmental improvements continued, life expectancy increased. More and more people get to live much longer now, however. The trajectory towards death in old age has not changed, he added. The study suggests evolutionary biology trumps everything, and so far medical advances have been unable to beat these biological constraints. Now, I don't want to diminish the endeavours of this scientific team. It seems to me they've done some fantastic work, compiled some incredible data and reach some interesting conclusions, but if you don't know death is real, honey, I got news for you. Death is real. How about we spend the time that we are here trying to align ourselves with advances that have long been evident in some communities and are certainly clear to me, even though they are hard to live by. We are ultimately one. Separation is an illusion. The impulse of love in itself is an acknowledgement of the union that exists between us. And if we only live like our individual life matters, then death is a big deal. But if we have a bigger idea, a bigger goal, a sense of togetherness and unity, then death, painful and tragic though it may be on an individual level, and when you lose someone, there's what can be more heartbreaking than that. There is something bigger, broader, and a sense of connection through these time-honoured values, whether you believe in God or an afterlife or not. If you liked that, God help you. Press like, give us the old ding thumbs up to dying, and subscribe if you want more content like this. And just subscribe anyway, I need you to subscribe. And comment, because we can stay in communion. Perhaps you're interested in how many logs I've got. The logs are okay at the moment. And remember that my podcast, Under the Skin from Luminary, is now available on Apple. So wherever you are in the world, you can hear me have in-depth discussions with experts on these topics, which is why I'm willing to spout off for ages on unknowable subjects like, you know, mortality and immortality and life after death, and be dismissive about the hard work of brilliant scientists.